Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Blue Turnip's Bad Podcast about good music. My name's Kyle,
Hey, what's up? I'm Brian.
and we are two-thirds of the rock band Blue Turnip. And we're just here to talk some good tunes. We've been having an awesome time counting down each of our top 5 albums starting in the year 2000 and going all the way through 2020. So we're having an awesome time doing that. Today, we are talking about 2005, which, Brian, I know we're both very excited about because I think 2005 is my absolute favorite year of music, and I think you said it's probably in your top 3.
Yeah, man, it's such a good year. I feel like either the music keeps getting better or we might be getting a little better at this. We'll have to call it the mediocre podcast pretty soon.
The mediocre podcast. There we
go. But yeah, man, 2005 is a great year. Probably my second favorite so far up through 2005. So
awesome.
Psyched.
Get pumped. All right. Woo! Well, if you've never listened to the show before, we'll get to the countdown in a few minutes, but we always like to start off up front with a little segment. And today we're going to be talking about soundtracks, movie and video game soundtracks, and how those can be so enhancing and powerful to those projects and just create those positive memories and keep you coming back to those things. But before we get into that, I want to mention something very special. So in 2 weeks, if you're watching this the day that it comes out, if you're not watching it the day that it comes out, that'll be May 16th, I think. Should know this date. Oh, no. May 15th. Sorry, May 15th. Blue Turnip is reuniting, gosh, for the first time since, I don't even want to guess, 2017?
Something like that. Yeah, it's been at least a few years.
Yeah, maybe 2018. Maybe 2018, I think.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time, and we're going to be playing actually where Brian is right now in his house. We're going to be recording an acoustic set and posting it right here on this YouTube channel. So we're really excited. We're going to be playing songs from our EP. We're going to be playing some covers, some favorites that we used to play, as well as some new ones that we've always wanted to play. And just a little hint, maybe one of the songs on one of the soundtracks that we're going to be talking about today is going to be featured in the set list. So.
Wow. What a great tease, dude. That'd be a hard one to figure out. There's a lot to pick from.
Yeah, like 120 songs to choose from.
And to specify, we're not going to be doing it in my laundry room, but we'll be doing it in the house. Maybe you see like the dryer in the back or whatever.
It's ambiance, man. It's ambiance.
Yeah. Just because my charger's in here today and I didn't feel like moving it. Lazy boys.
All right, sweet. Well, so like we said, we'll count down the 2005 albums in just a little bit, so we'll get there soon. But first, let's take a little bit of time to talk about some soundtracks, man. So I know this was an idea that we came up with towards the end of the last the end of the last podcast. Why don't you talk about it a little bit? What grabs you about soundtracks?
Yeah, dude, soundtracks can actually, like, speaking of movies first, make movies memorable. When you hear the songs, you think about the movie and it makes you happy. For the most part, like I think the really good soundtracks are kind of the upbeat, positive movies. So it's a good correlation there. And for video games, those are really interesting. We talked about it a little bit last week, and we'll talk about MVP 05 today, I think. But video games are impressive because when you get in the zone playing a game and you hear the same songs over and over again, you think you'd get sick of them, but you don't. They're good jams
when it's done
to have in the video. Yeah. So yeah, dude.
Fantastic. I know. Yeah. Well, let's start with video games since you just mentioned that. I know because this is a classic. So we'll kind of work our way forward through time. This is one that you and I did not plan to talk about, but it just came to mind when you were talking about that. For the Super Nintendo, Ken Griffey Jr. Major League Baseball, literally one song. It was like a 3-minute song, and it played on a loop. And I don't think we ever got tired of it.
Dude, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's such a good jam. It's so
Yeah,
funny.
I mean, it's like it's just like good old rock and roll, and there's like a couple ups and downs and some highs and lows, and like
Yeah.
guitar solos in quotation marks. It was all like the 16-bit, like old 8-bit music or whatever. But
And it's not just like on the opening credits, like the song literally plays the entire time you play the game.
it really does. Yeah, every pitch.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a great point.
Well, let's keep cranking. So this is another one I did not have on my list, but a game that you and I used to play together all the time, the first Donkey Kong Country game.
Yeah.
Also for Super Nintendo. Awesome tunes.
Yeah.
Tunes.
Super Nintendo.
That one did such a cool job of like the different types of levels. There were like the jungle levels and the cave levels and the mountain levels and stuff. They all had kind of their different music and their different vibes. That was really cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say Super Nintendo had some jams, dude. Mega Man X is probably my favorite Super Nintendo game, and that soundtrack's awesome. Yeah, and there's this dude, I've sent you a video, there's this dude who does like heavy metal covers of the Mega Man X songs, and they're so sick.
Flame Mammoth.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Man, good call. We didn't have that one on our list either.
I know.
Mega Man X is awesome music. Well, shifting forward in time, another game that you and I used to play together all the time. And this one's interesting because it's probably not the kind of music that you and I really necessarily listen to on a regular basis, but Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. And Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 had a great soundtrack too, but Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 especially, I think, just like talk about songs that fit a game. And just like what you're seeing on the screen matches what you're hearing in your ears so perfectly.
Yeah. And they get stuck in your head. Like I don't even know who these artists are for the most part, but I see the song Cyclone. Got me running in a cyclone. Got me running in a cyclone. And the one that's like, oh, you ready to go? Because I'm ready. And the funny thing about this soundtrack is the songs, like the game's rated T for teen, I think, because of like violence or whatever. I don't remember if this game had blood or not, but I remember the third one did.
Yeah,
but this game is the first time I heard Guerrilla Radio by Rage Against the Machine, and I didn't realize how super edited it was.
I think they just cut out all the verses.
I think so.
I think it's just the chorus, just like lights out, Guerrilla Radio, and then like everything else is just guitar riff.
So like when you hear their song for the first time, you're like, this isn't the same. I like it the Tony Hawk way better. Yeah, it's really funny. But dude, it does fit the game so well. Skater Boy music.
So much. That was such a fun game. I haven't played that one in years and years. I'd love to go back and try that one out.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is what we talked about last time. MVP Baseball 2005. Always plug it. Greatest baseball game ever created. So awesome.
Agreed.
I think it's a 6-song soundtrack, 7-song soundtrack.
Something like that.
Just loops over and over again. When not when you're playing the game, but in the menus, and you just don't get tired of it. So awesome.
Nope. Yeah, and like we mentioned last week, has that Zooton song.
Yeah, man.
That's the main selling point for me. But every song, it's great.
Yeah, the iRoxy song, the Donuts, You Owe Me and I Owe You.
Tessie by the Dropkick Murphys.
Oh, yep. Which even as a Red Sox song, you gotta like it.
And the Chocolate Girl one.
Yeah, what is it? Louis the 14th or whatever that is. Yeah.
Dude, true story. The soundtrack's so good that I actually bought it on iTunes like a long time ago. But I bought all of them, 99 cents a pop.
And I actually have them because you bought them. Yeah, that's why I have them still too. Yeah. And it's such a popular, like it's such a cult classic game and such a popular soundtrack that like you can still, like, if you Google MVP Baseball 2005, always one of the first thing that pops up is like soundtrack or like a YouTube playlist to all the songs because it was just such a classic soundtrack.
Yeah, it's awesome. Never gets old.
Yeah. We got a couple more video games on the list here. SSX Tricky. That was one that you mentioned.
Yeah, the one, I don't know which SSX game it was, but the only one it had was It's Tricky to Rock a Rhyme song.
The Tricky remix, yeah.
Dude, that was it. and the whole time you sing that song while you're playing, just like bobbing your head. It's tricky to rock around. It's tricky.
And yeah, when you be in the big and like in the later games when they got a little more sophisticated, when you like be in the air, like doing your big trick, and you hear the guy going like, "Oh, tricky!"
Yeah, that one kind of just like pumps you up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it fits that game so well. Yeah, because it's SSX tricky. So
Yeah.
makes
I'll say,
sense.
my wife and I, we also love the Xbox 360. They rebooted the SSX series and did one, and also a great soundtrack.
Nice.
Same deal, super fun. That song is not. I don't think you can listen to the whole song in the new game, but it like comes in and out as you start doing really well. The song like filters in. You're like, there it is.
Let's go. Nice.
And I'll just mention one game that I just played recently, because I tend to be like 8 to 12 years behind on all my video games. I just played Fallout New Vegas for the first time, and it was all like old like American songbook, like Sinatra, Bing Crosby, and it was set in this like futuristic wasteland. So it was really cool that you're like walking around this like post nuclear war like hellscape, and you're just listening to like this beautiful like Bing Crosby and like all these classics, and it was kind of it was a really cool soundtrack there as well.
That's cool. Dig that.
Well, we had some movies here too. We'll just
let's hop into them.
Rapid fire these guys. Remember the Titans?
Yes, dude, one of my favorites. Like I was talking about earlier, such a fun movie and such a fun soundtrack. They just go hand in hand, man.
Yeah.
Like we used to sing along to this all the time.
Oh yeah, all the time.
The opener, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Come on, dude. We used to like alternate parts or whatever. Yeah. And they sing these songs in the movie too.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think of when I hear these songs. I think of Blue singing Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Yep. And like when what is it when the one white player's playing Act Naturally for Blue, and he's just like can't handle it. Like we're like, what is it?
It's like, does the term cruel and unusual punishment mean anything to you?
So awesome.
That's Ryan Gosling, man.
Oh, you're right. Oh man, I forgot. Yeah. I forgot about that.
He's just like, well, what do you think?
It's like what it's like 12 or 13 songs long, something like that, and it's like every song that you want to hear when you turn on oldies radio. It's like that's every song in a row. Like that's exactly what I want to hear when I turn on the 60s.
They're all classics.
Yeah,
such a great soundtrack.
Great movie too. I haven't seen that one in a long time, but
yeah, me neither.
Another classic movie, Shrek. The Shreks. Ooh. I mean, Shrek's essentially a meme these days, but the Shrek soundtrack, it's iconic. It can't be beat.
Yeah, man, it's so good. And let's give another little hint here. The teaser comes from this album for the song we're going to play in the live show. Figure it out.
If you've listened to past episodes, you probably can figure it
out. Dude, these songs aren't like as good of songs as say Remember the Titans, but they're fun songs, like the Baha Men one, Best Years of Our Lives, I'm a Believer, the Smash Mouth version, All Star, another Smash Mouth, and dude, and they have like
that Self, I Want to Stay Home Today. I legitimately love that song. Like it's really a great tune.
Yeah, and they have the like at the end of the soundtrack, I think they had Donkey singing something.
The pop song mashup, like the medley.
Yeah. So that's classic.
Awesome. Shrek's a winner, always. This is a movie that you love. I think we've mentioned it on the podcast before because we were talking about Ben Queller, Rudderless.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention this one just real quick because Rudderless is a good one to me because they're all original songs. And for a movie to have good original songs, I think is pretty rare. So really like the soundtrack, just like good, catchy pop songs. But I just wanted to drop that one in there real quick.
That's a great one, yeah. And I was so glad that you forced my wife and I to watch that movie when we were over your house last time because it was a really, really good one.
Yeah, I actually bought the soundtrack for that one. I liked it so much. So
nice.
It's a good one.
Well, speaking of this, so this will transition us well into talking about the albums, because speaking of original music written for movies and soundtracks, and kind of pushing us into 2005, the last soundtrack that we got on our list to talk about here is people always think I'm joking when I say this, but it's literally my favorite movie. It's my number one favorite movie, the animated movie Hoodwinked. Hoodwinked. It's kind of a funny movie because they burnt all their budget on like getting really high quality voices. They got really awesome voice actors that you know and love and recognize. And so the animation suffered a little bit for that. It's like a little bit clunky looking, but such an awesome, like such a fun movie with a great script and like lots of like goofy comedy and surprises and stuff. But the music is also awesome, and it's almost all original songs. The guys who wrote the screenplay for the movie also wrote 4 or 5 songs for it, and they're really good. Ben Folds wrote a song for it. There's a couple other originals on there, and the score is really cool because it's not necessarily like a long like sweeping classical suite. It's like lots of little bits, and there's this kind of hoodwinked theme that runs in and out of the movie, and the soundtrack has the hoodwinked theme in like different versions. There's like a surfer version and a classical version and a techno like there's all these different versions of the same song. So yeah, it's actually my first honorable mention for 2005 is the Hoodwinked soundtrack. Nice.
Boom, dude, it's a good one. I haven't watched that movie in a long time, since we were kids. Yeah. I'll have to revisit it, man. But I remember I really like the Ben Folds song "Red Is Blue."
Red is Blue, awesome.
Yeah, it's a good it's a good one.
We were my sister and I saw Ben Folds at this outdoor venue, and we had this whole plan where we were going to wait for a quiet part in the show and just scream out "Red is Blue" to see if he would play it, because I'm sure that it's a song that nobody in the history of his concerts has ever requested, just to see if he even remembered it like from like 15 years ago. But we didn't do it. We wimped out.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy. Freebird.
Well, sweet. That was fun talking about some soundtracks there. Some good memories, video games and movies. And if you have any soundtracks that we should check out, drop them in the comments section below.
Oh yeah,
we'd love to check them out. Yeah. We'll shout you out next time if you throw us a good one.
Yeah, man, sweet.
And speaking of what you can find below this video, every week Brian is kind enough to curate a Spotify playlist that includes selections from all the albums that we'll talk about in our top 5s. So in the description to this video, you can find a Spotify link to that playlist. Or if you're not a Spotify person, up in the top right corner, you should see a little info card that takes you to a YouTube playlist with the same songs. So whatever your preference is, there you go. And one of the artists, which I'll talk about when we get there, he's not on Spotify. So if you're interested in him, you can only find him on the YouTube playlist. But the Spotify playlist has everything else. So good times. Well, all right, let me speed through my my honorable mentions for 2005, and then we'll get into our top 5 countdown. So I mentioned my first one is the Hoodwinked soundtrack. Next, this is an album we've mentioned before on the podcast, Guero by Beck. Super fun one. It's Beck kind of at his classic roots, like going back to that sort of quirky, like alternative rap, rock, whatever it is that he does. Yeah, really kind of classic Beck stuff going on there. The Mission Bell by Delirious. Delirious was kind of in their real sweet spot in this time. I mentioned World Service a couple episodes ago. This is probably my favorite Delirious album. It's got lots of really good songs on it. Some U2 influence, but also some more modern influences like modern rock Radiohead, but also some they get into some riffs and maybe a little bit harder at times. So yeah, Delirious, really cool stuff. This is an artist we talked about before on the podcast, Jamie Cullum, his album Catching Tales. Dude's just a great songwriter, awesome piano player, super fun. This one, he probably turned up the fun meter a little bit and kind of did his like kind of signature melding of pop and jazz, and got some really cool stuff going on in there. Another one is Redemption Songs by Jars of Clay. This is a really cool album. Jars of Clay took a lot of old hymns, some really popular ones and some really obscure ones, and just kind of reinvented them in sort of a acoustic rock way. Yeah, there's some real gems on there. Some guest artists, the Blind Boys of Alabama are on there, a couple tracks. Yeah, really cool stuff there. And then a couple of prog ones to close out my honorable mentions. We've got 10 Stories Down by the Pineapple Thief. If you're into that sort of like moody, modern rock, prog rock, mushing together, 10 Stories Down by the Pineapple Thief is awesome. That first song, Pray For Me, is, if that one doesn't grab you, then you may as well not listen to the whole album. It's such a cool song, such a cool song. And then the last one is World Through My Eyes, and the band is RPWL, just the letters RPWL. They started off as a Pink Floyd cover band and started writing their own music somewhere along the way. And so big time Pink Floyd influence that you'll definitely hear if you listen to their tunes. But World Through My Eyes is probably my favorite RPWL. And speaking of, actually, I think 3 of those, The Mission Bell by Delirious, 10 Stories Down by Pineapple Thief, and World Through My Eyes by RPWL. Those are probably my favorite albums by those artists. And when we get to the countdown, 4 of my top 5 are my absolute favorite album by those particular artists. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm just very excited to talk about this year.
Yeah, we were talking about before we hopped on here. It's kind of weird because my 2003 was super similar to that. It was like a bunch of my favorite bands and my favorite albums by my favorite bands. It's so weird how it works out like that.
Yeah.
But that's how it goes, man. I don't know why. And it's funny that you mentioned Beck's like whatever you call a sound. The first thing I think of when I think of Beck is like old telephones.
Yeah.
He was always putting phone sounds. Beep, boop, boop, beep. I'm like, yeah.
Nothing screams good music like, yeah. Old telephone sounds.
Yeah. Anyway, good picks, man.
Yeah, well, awesome, man. Well, I've been talking a lot, Brian, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you hit us with your number 5 of the year 2005?
Will do. My number 5 is Out of Exile by Audioslave. It is their second album after their self-titled one. Not as good as the first one. I mean, it doesn't get much better than the original Audioslave, but this one's got gems on it. And like looking through the track list on this one, the thing that stood out to me the most was there's a lot more better mellow songs, if you can call them mellow for Audioslave, but like Be Yourself, Doesn't Remind Me, Heaven's Dead, Dandelion. Those are all really good, like melodic songs with just like simple rhythm guitar and stuff like that. So that's something a little different to take away from this one. But it's got a lot of really, really good typical heavy rock Audioslave stuff. Some ripping solos as usual. Yeah, man, all around a really big fan of this album. I think all 3 Audioslave albums I love. Yeah, one of those bands that I wish would have stuck around a little longer. But yeah, dude, I mean, it's great. What do you think about this one?
This is honestly, this is the Audioslave album that I know the least. I really love the first one. We talked about that for the 2002 episode. And then their third album, Revelations, is probably my second favorite. And this one is just one that, like, I think I listened to it once or twice, and then I haven't listened to it. And I don't really remember why. I don't remember why I never came back to this one. So you putting it on your list today is going to inspire me to revisit it. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, man, take it back. The 3 I put on the playlist. That's a good place to start for people. Like the only thing that maybe is a little annoying about this album is a lot of the guitar solos are kind of sound the same, whereas the first one they were kind of stood alone. But there's some really good stuff on here.
Nice.
Good enough to make my top 5. So
there you go, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I dig it. I dig it. Cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, and I'll hop into my number 4, which is your number 5.
That's right.
And this one's kind of a sleeper. I don't think a lot of people know this one. It's a band called Bleach, and it is their final studio album called Farewell Old Friends. Fittingly, farewell to Bleach.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's I don't know a whole ton of Bleach stuff. Like I've sampled some of their older stuff, it just didn't work for me. But this album really does it for me. I think the big selling point for me is that it's got a massive Coldplay influence. They're really old Coldplay stuff like Parachutes and Rush of Blood to the Head, just like the song structures and the falsettos. It just reminds me so much of Coldplay, and as I've talked about before, I'm a massive Coldplay fan. So that's I like it a lot.
Yeah. That's interesting that you mentioned that. Because I'm not as much of a Coldplay fan. We've talked about Coldplay several times on the cast. Now that you mention it, like I do hear the influence in the songwriting for sure. The sound and the production though is very different than Coldplay, I would say. Like
yeah, no, I agree with that.
Way more of a produced album than Coldplay does. Like lots of guitar layers and like kind of weird, quirky stuff in the background. Tons of guitar feedback. Almost every song has like just nasty feedback, like in and out. But yeah. I actually now that you mention it, I totally hear the influence. I never picked up on that before. Even like if you think about like the third song, Gonna Take Some Time, that chorus, you can almost imagine that being plopped down in the middle of a Coldplay song.
Yeah, even the vocalist kind of reminds you of Chris Martin in a way. But getting off the Coldplay thing, like the songs are awesome. Just like really easy to sing along to songs, easy to listen to. Some good rockers, some good slow jams. Yeah, man, it's a great track list.
Yeah, this is an album that I just put on repeat when I was a kid. Just played it over and over and over again. And you mentioned your blog in the past episode. I've got a blog as well that I haven't done in a long time, almost a year, but on the Blue Turnip website, which you can also find a link to in the description below. But I did one that was like the 10 best albums you've never heard of before. And I put Farewell Old Friends by Bleach on there. Yeah, just like you said, it's 10 songs. So it's pretty compact. And there's really just not any fat on it. There's nothing that you'd pull out of it. Such a cool sound. They obviously like took their time and made everything sound exactly the way they wanted it to sound, which is really cool. Like you mentioned, pretty different sound from a lot of their other stuff, which is kind of interesting because if you think about a band that like, okay, we know this is going to be our last album, this is going to be the last thing we ever record, so it's going to sound totally different from the last like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
It's like that's a pretty bold choice.
Yeah,
but I mean it works. Like I think they went heavier on the guitars and it paid off. They went more interesting on the production. They did some quirky stuff. I think there's some kind of like jokes in there too, like the end of the song To the Top. I think it's like a minute and a half of the same chord over and over and over again. Like just just like ramming on it. And the first time you listen to it, you're like, is my CD skipping? Like what's happening? Like what's going on here? And we're allowed to say CD because this is 2005, so don't judge us for being old.
That's right.
But yeah, man, and this is one that I still, sometimes there's an album that you listen to when you're a kid and you kind of like end up stop listening to it when you get older. But this is one that I just never got tired of. I keep listening to it all through the years.
Yeah, it cracked my top. I think it was in my top 5 favorite Christian rock albums of all time. It's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Really is. And a hidden track on there. I know we talked about the the pros
Yeah.
and cons of hidden tracks, but they do I've been everywhere, man. At the
Yeah.
very, very end. It's kind of goofy.
That's kind of like a Christian rock thing, I feel like the goofy hidden track.
Yeah.
I like Audio Adrenaline did a couple. Sanctus Real might have done one. Did Reliant K do a funny one? Hidden track one time?
Always.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. maybe that's like what the record label forced him to do that.
You got
Like it's good, but you have to have a silly hidden track.
show the kids that you're fun.
Yeah.
That's funny. I always mention too, because I think that album art is so cool, especially from a person like me who like I just have no visual artistic ability at all. The art of this album is so cool. It's very like browns and muted tones. The cover is just like a ship on the ocean. But if you
Yeah.
can get your hands on the CD, I'm sure it's almost impossible to do that nowadays because of how kind of off the beaten path this is. But if you unfolded the album cover, it was like a full like kind of fantasy style map, like this whole like map that they had invented of this like fantasy land and like it's just super cool. And the CD itself, it looked plain white when you just glanced at it, but it was almost like holographic in that way where like if you held it at different angles you could see that there were like designs and things that were like hidden on the top of the CD. So just really cool art for this album too.
Heck yeah. Another reason to buy CDs.
Yeah.
There's keep piling up the reasons, man. There's another one.
All right, sweet. Well, I guess so that was your 5 and 4 and my number 5 as well. So my number 4 is an album that I know that you love as well. So I'm probably going to let you get started talking about this one.
All right.
My number 4 is Nothing Is Sound by Switchfoot. I know, Brian, we've talked about before that the only reason you're not doing honorable mentions is because you deleted them all already on your research.
Yeah.
But I know this is an album that you love and probably one that you'd consider to be an honorable mention from 2005.
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely in my list when I was trimming it down. I think it's my second favorite Switchfoot album. It might be my first favorite. But it's awesome, man. Like especially the first 4 songs just captures you. Lonely Nation into Stars, a sweet transition from those songs. Then Happy as the Uppy Word, and The Shadow Proves the Sunshine, probably my favorite song on the album. But so many gems, and I don't know if we've talked about closing tracks a lot, but this is one of my favorite closing tracks on an album, like maybe ever. Daisy.
Oh yeah,
it's so cool. That build at the end is so awesome. But I think this is like prime Switchfoot for sure.
I totally agree, man. I think this is probably my second favorite Switchfoot album, right behind Learning to Breathe. And you're totally right about Daisy. What like cream of the crop for a closing track, and it was so cool. We got to see them. There's this outdoor venue in Wilmington where we are, and they came and played, and their opening set was like an acoustic set, and they took some requests, and it was very casual, kind of hanging out, and the back half was like the full-blown rock show. And the very first song they played on the opening on the rock and roll half was Daisy. And I just didn't expect it at all because, it was 2019, I think, at the time. And the album was like 14 years old. And it's a pretty deep track. Like, it's not one of their famous songs.
Yeah.
And John Foreman was like in the crowd. So he happened to be like really close to where we were. So we were just like, it's Daisy. Like, and speaking of Shadow Proves the Sunshine, they play that. They've been doing live streams all year, and they play that one all the time. And it's such a great song. And when we saw them, they actually stopped the whole show, and we're like, "Oh, we want to do this one like bluegrass style." And they had their sound crew like bring out one of those bluegrass microphones that like takes sound from all directions. and they all
Yeah.
switched. Like the whole show stopped for like 3 minutes basically because they were like, we really feel like we want to do it this way, and it was really really cool. They did it like super chill and very beautiful, and
Nice.
yeah, you know. But I mean, you nailed it. You nailed so much of it already. Like Lonely Nation into Stars, Happy's the Uppy Word is one of my favorites. The Setting Sun is another one of my favorites. The Fatal Wound. Fatal Wound might be my favorite Switchfoot song. I know it's kind of a weird one.
Yeah.
But it's like 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and it's just like awesome.
Nice. I just thought of an interesting tidbit about this one.
Oh.
This was like one of the first CDs that was unburnable. Like
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't burn the CD, and I think it ended up hurting their sales, if I remember right. But they didn't want anybody to burn it. I mean, understandable, because you don't want your music out there for free. But that's I always think of that when I think of this album, because I remember that, because we definitely tried to burn the CD. Like, what is wrong with this thing?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that came from Sony, because this was their first album with Sony, and Sony was trying to launch they were trying to compete with iTunes. And they
Yeah.
had their own like music database service, and it turned out to be a train wreck. It was like super glitchy, and then like it got hacked, and there were viruses, and like, so yeah, I know this album was one that was kind of at the forefront of that sort of like Sony scandal, because
Yeah.
people were like, I can't put it on my MP3 player. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because this, I mean, yeah, 2005, we're talking about, like iPods and MP3 players were very much a thing like by then, and not everybody wanted to carry around a CD player, and so yeah, it was definitely interesting.
Yeah. The hard things about being a kid, man. Not
Yeah.
being able to burn CD was like devastating. It's
I know.
kind of funny, like burning CDs is like such a no-no, and now it's like nothing can, like, you can stream songs for free. So
Oh, it's crazy. I know.
yeah. Yeah, man. I always think about that South Park episode with Metallica
Yep.
or whoever. Yeah, where they're all pissed, like, because people are like downloading their songs illegally. Like, how am I gonna buy my kid a house in the Bahamas?
And that's the thing, like we've talked about in episodes before, like artists like that, like it essentially doesn't matter, like if you're that popular. But for a lot of the artists that we talk about, like it hurts, like that your
Oh
Spotify
yeah, yeah.
just gets played for free. Essentially, it's like, oh, that
Mhm.
because it's probably the number one. Spotify and Apple Music, I'd say, represent well over half of music listening these days.
Yeah. Well,
So
we feel the pain. We're waiting for our first Spotify paycheck.
yeah, like 87 cents or whatever
Yeah.
it's gonna be.
I don't think they even pay you until you break like $20. So it might be like 100 years or so.
Maybe we'll be end up being cult classic. One of the albums I'm talking about today turned into a cult classic like over 10 years after it came out. So
Yeah, man. Somebody will
there's still
find it
hope.
one day. It's out there. All the songs say like less than 1,000 streams.
Which I felt really
Oh,
bad. I felt really bad about until I started doing research for these albums, and there's a lot of music even from like 15, 20 years ago that's still in the less than 1,000. That's really good that I
yeah,
found.
yeah.
So it doesn't mean we're bad. It just means that we're sad.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh, all right. Let's get back on track here. Let's see. Am I going to my number three?
Yeah, man, let's
Or
do
do you want
it.
to go? Okay. All right. My number three from 2005 was Plans by Death Cab for Cutie. Ranks right up there, probably in my top three Death Cab albums. Was the first Death Cab album that I heard. Sold immediately. It just hit me in my feels.
Mm,
Something I noticed when I listened to this the first time, which was weird because I usually don't notice this, was how awesome the lyrics were.
mm.
Um, I usually don't pay super close attention to lyrics. There's a couple bands I do, and Death Cab is one of them. Ben Gibbard, songwriting, lyrical genius, man. Like the stuff that he writes is just like next level. Like he's basically like it's poetry. It's just like beautiful stuff. So I really like the lyrics on this album a lot. And I really like the songs a lot. I've talked about this before, but they have really interesting ways they write songs. A lot of times there won't be choruses, there'll be bridges at the end. Just not your normal stuff. So typical Death Cab here. Obviously, I Will Follow You Into the Dark was ginormous hit. People joke that it's like a big emo song from the emo days. But that song's like so good lyrically. But just really good. They're a mellow band, but you don't get bored with it. And this album's got really good flow. I think all their albums have really good flow. But yeah, it's got a bunch of my favorite songs on it. Like Crooked Teeth is so awesome. Different names for the same thing. Great. What Sarah Said, amazing. And this album actually went platinum.
Nice.
And yeah, and it's because of I Will Follow You Into the Dark. And going back to CDs, is because that's how people, when they heard a single on the radio, they would buy the CD. And they sold tons and tons of copies. So yeah, the album went platinum, and nobody knows that much about it, so it's kind of interesting. But they did it, bro.
That's a huge achievement.
It was all downhill from there.
You said, because you said they were they still indie at this point?
This may have been their transition album.
Gotcha.
Into a label. Yeah, because Transatlantic System was their last true indie album. I think this one was Atlantic Records. So that obviously helped too.
Nice. Well, let me ask you. So, you mentioned the lyrics, and lyrics are such a personal thing. You know, what hooks you into lyrics and what don't. So what is it like about this album that really pulls you in lyrically? Like, are there certain songs or certain lines or the content, or like what draws you into that?
Yeah, they're thought-provoking lyrics, and just like the words that he uses are not words you hear in songs a lot. And he doesn't do the whole like rhyming thing a lot. He'll just say what he wants to say. That's why I kind of said it's kind of like poetry. It's kind of just like whatever he's feeling, he'll talk about. I can't think off the top of my head. Like I can go back to I'll Follow You Into the Dark. Just such like a devastating song. Is like the chorus goes, if heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, I will follow you into the dark. Just like, whoa, that's intense. Just like really cool. Like you get visuals. Yeah, I just love the way he spells it out. Always have.
Nice.
But yeah,
that's awesome. And you're right. I mean, even just reading that out loud right now, like it did read like poetry.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. Faux show. Yeah, man. But I'll be talking about Death Cab a lot in the future as well. So I'll call it there. But I definitely definitely recommend Plans. Top tier Death Cab, and I'll pass it to you.
Sweet. Sounds great, man. Well, my number 3 album was really, really tough to decide whether this was going to be number 3 or number 2 for me. Ended up in the number 3 spot. Is A Collision by David Crowder Band. This is such a special album. It's such a complete and whole work of art. So the album's in 4 parts. And each part kind of has its own distinct characteristics. The A part are kind of like the radio hits from the album. It had Come and Listen, Here's Our King, Wholly Yours, a couple others. But like the kind of poppiest, big radio worship hits that came out. And then all of a sudden it transitions into this B part. There's this, it's called A Quiet Interlude, this little violin canon almost. And then the B part is just like all over the place. It's like you went from this real honed in like pop worship sound to now it's like, whoa, like listen to all these different styles. There's like some electronic influence. There's some big time blues influence. It goes into like this rollicking bluegrass song, I Saw the Light. Then they do a Sufjan Stevens cover, Oh God, Where Are You Now? And they like build in a theme from the album into that cover. And then that transitions into the C part, which is kind of the darkest section of the album. Most of the songs are in a minor key, and that's where the heaviest tunes on the record are. And then it switches to the D part, and that's kind of like you like kind of come out of the darkness and are in like a celebration. And you have this track, We Won, and Rescue is Coming, and the ending of the record is really incredible. It's actually it's 21 tracks, which sounds intimidating, but there's a lot of the songs are shorter, so it's not like an unbelievably long listen. But the track 20 is actually just an interview. It's like this interview between the main singer of the band, David Crowder, and just like some nobody interviewer. And basically the interview sort of summed up is like the interviewer wants to know what everything on the album means. He's like, what does this mean? What does this symbol mean? What's the deal with these like fake songs between the real songs? And David Crowder just won't tell him anything about it. He's just like, I don't think you should read, he's like, I don't think you should read too much into this stuff. Like, like it is what it is. And like the interview never really ends. It sort of just like fades out, and the last song kind of just fades in. And even just talking about it, I'm getting like chills in my in my stomach. It's like and it just transitions into this. And for me, like in addition to the music being so awesome, this album is really like a picture of the Christian experience. You get like the highs and the joys of worship, and like the lows of doubt, and when things go bad and when things are tough around you, and questions and answers and joys and sorrows. And it's just a work of art. I have very mixed feelings about David Crowder's career as a whole, and I'm not really ever since he went solo, like not really a fan either of his music or kind of what he's done outside of his music and said. But back in this era when he was with the band and they were doing some just really creative stuff, this is just it's on another plane. So awesome.
It's just super well thought out. Like we always talk about like length of albums. Sometimes they can be too long, but this one, it's one of those cases where it doesn't feel like it. And I agree with you. It seems like artwork, and that's what music is. And I actually got to interview David Crowder.
Oh, nice.
A few years ago. Dude, he was so nice. He was such a nice guy. Super easy to talk to. And obviously I like fanboyed on him a little bit before the interview. So yeah, I mean, just like super down to earth guy. So that was really cool.
Nice.
Yeah. And I wanted you to tell a story about the song Do Not Move, and how you convinced one of your friends to use it as their baseball batting song.
I was actually just talking about this the other day because we've been talking about this album a lot, my wife and I. So I had this friend, such a great dude. His name was Mitch. And we kind of got each other through. It was his senior year, my junior year of the baseball season, which wasn't really a great year for either of us for various reasons. And so we were on the bench together a lot of times and got to be pretty good friends. But he was kind of a quirky guy, and at the time he really wasn't into music. And it's funny, since then he's like learned to play guitar and he's like super into music and stuff now. But he was just like, I don't know what song to pick because I don't really like music. And I was like, well, come over to my house. I've got lots of like kind of weird, interesting stuff, and I'll just play you some stuff and we'll figure something out for you. And so he was a pitcher. And so the song Do Not Move starts off with like, I don't know, maybe a minute 10 of like this kind of like weird sort of building electronic music, where there's lots of little parts and bits that start to build on top of each other, and then it eventually like bursts into like the actual song, which is really cool. And so we were like, oh man, since you're a pitcher, like you'll be out on the mound warming up, and like it'll have all this time for you to be able to like hear it, and people will think it's really cool. And so he pitched several times that year, but it was always on the road, so he never got to hear the song, never played. And then on senior night, they played everybody's song while they were like walking from the dugout to home plate. So it was like a 5-second walk or whatever. And so like the very beginning of the song is just like these little weird little noises and stuff. And then it was just over. And so we were just dying. Like he was laughing for the whole time he was walking out there, and everyone in the dugout was laughing. And yeah, it was really funny.
It's so funny. Like people need to listen to the song to understand how funny it was.
I think I put it on the playlist. I think that was one of the ones I picked to put on the playlist. So you should be able to check that one out there.
Yeah, great. I remember that. It was so funny because I was in the stands. Yeah. Oh, that's classic. Like, and you like invest so much into your batting song or whatever.
Oh yeah, you really do.
Yeah. Dude, like real quick, do you remember what your batting songs were in high school?
Well, actually, let's do this. Let's make that our opening segment next time.
Okay.
Next time we'll do at bat songs. That'll be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's
good call. Good call, man.
Good call. Yeah. Right on.
All right. I'll turn it over to you for your number 2 album of 2005.
Yes, indeed. And that is X and Y by Coldplay. And before I get into this one, Coldplay just announced they're coming out with a new song on May 7th.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I think they might go on tour again.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's about that time for people to start going on tour again.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, but X and Y is their 3rd album, and it was their first big change in sound. And surprisingly, like people usually get mad about that and like hate the band for changing their sound. People loved it. So they scored on their sound change. And it's got a vibe for sure. And I really, really like the way this thing's pieced together. It's way more like synthy, electronic stuff, a lot of heavier guitar riffs. The electric guitars featured a lot more, which I love because I love their guitarist. Bigger drums, just like bigger sound overall. Some huge smash hits on this one were Fix You, which is one of my favorite Coldplay songs, and Speed of Sound was the other really big one. But this album, like, it's funny because I know a lot about Coldplay and they hate this album. They freaking hate it. They don't like, Chris Martin won't even talk about it. And the reason is because they went through a real tough time as a band when they were recording this. Chris Martin kind of became a control freak. And said, we're going to do everything my way. So they all had a lot of tension on this one. So it's more of like a mental thing that they don't want to revisit it. But as a fan, I love it. So maybe Chris Martin should do some solo projects.
Get it off his chest.
Yeah. But they do play Fix You live. It's the only one they play live on this album, which is a bummer as a fan, like, but I understand where they're coming from. Because it's one of my favorite Coldplay albums. And they also did another little interesting fact about this song. There's a hidden track. I guess it's listed on the album, but it doesn't have like a track number on there, called Till Kingdom Come, that they wrote for Johnny Cash to sing, but Johnny Cash had died recently. I think it might have been that year or the year before. So they ended up singing it themselves and paying tribute to him that way. Gotcha. So that's a cool little tag along there. Yeah, but this album's definitely got a good different sound. And it was a good step in their evolvement. They kept evolving from here and changing things up. And I respect that about a band. I like when they mix things up. So yeah, big fan.
That's cool, man. Yeah, and I know it's interesting. Like, I think different artists have different emotional connections to their body of work. Like, some of them like can look back and be like, oh yeah, like I was really influenced by so and so at that time, and like I can hear that and whatever. And some guys look back and they get they get really moved in one way or another by what they did. Because I know like Devin Townsend, an artist that we both like, there's stuff from his discography that he won't play live. Same as you said, because it's just like the what he was going through personally at those times. He just like can't really relive it again by playing those songs. And
Right.
so it's interesting. I didn't know that about this particular Coldplay album, because it doesn't really sound like an album that would it's not like a super dark record or anything like that, or does it,
Right.
that
Yeah.
that conflict doesn't come through in the song so much. But
True. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. They just didn't get along at the time. And I mean, they got over it really fast. It's actually kind of funny because they went into the Viva La Vida sessions a few years after that. And Brian Eno produced that album. And he told Chris Martin to leave. He's like, just leave. He's like, let the band work on the songs. He's like, come back in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So Chris Martin left, came back, and Viva La Vida is one of his favorite things he's ever done.
Nice.
So yeah, just personal. I mean, like, artists have emotions too.
Yeah.
A lot of times you forget that. But yeah. So it's some good history behind this one for sure.
Nice. Cool,
Yeah, man.
Cool story, Hansel. Great talk, man.
Yeah, I'm so knowledgeable.
The insider info for sure.
I know like really like 2 bands like really well, and that's it. But so I'll drop my knowledge when I can.
Well, that's sweet, man. All right, well, I guess I'll take it for my number 2.
Yeah.
My number 2 is Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum by the band Tally Hall. So I kind of got into Tally Hall sort of backwards, because I got really into one of they have been on hiatus since like 2012, 2013. And I got really into one of their band members' solo album that he came out with, which we'll talk about in a later episode. And then sort of like reverse got into this band Tally Hall that he was in beforehand. And this has turned into one of my favorite albums. Like here it is, number 2 on my favorite year of music of all time. It is such fun. But it's not like, sometimes when you hear fun, like it's like, oh, fun, like at the expense of like high quality, or fun at the expense of like putting a lot of thought into your stuff. And that's definitely not the case here. It's incredibly fun, and it's also super intricate and really well done music. Kind of power pop at its finest. They just pack as much as you possibly can into like these 3-4 minute songs, where like the melodies just stay jammed in your brain forever. And there's also, every time you go back and listen to it, you're like, oh man, listen to that layer, listen to this background vocal, listen to that string part. It's just like, there's so much going on in here. Yeah, and this is a cool band because they have, there's 5 members. 3 of them are all write songs really regularly and very well. And 4 of them sing. So there's lots of different lead vocalists on the different tracks, and you get kind of different perspectives from the different songwriters. Just, I mean, such an awesome album. Can't get enough of it.
Yeah, they got that catchy sound. And tell me if you agree with me on this one. When I hear him, I always hear a lot of Ben Folds, kind of like a similar vibe.
I hear a little bit of Ben Folds. I think I hear more like older artists. Like I hear some Queen, hear some Beatles, hear some 10cc. I hear Ben Folds in there. Some like I think about the songs like Just Apathy, number 8 on that one. That's a big time Ben Folds sounding song.
Mm-hmm.
On the second album, there's definitely more of that, like the more Ben Folds album stuff. On the first one, they're just like it's so quirky. Like the second song is almost like a punk rock, like super upbeat, and then right into the third song, which is like a rap rock, right into the fourth song, which is like this like super heavy vocal effect. Like it's almost like 3 songs in one. Like there's lots of changes. So it's very quirky little album, and you might know a couple ones from this album if you've kind of been on the internet, because the 7th song, Banana Man, if you go back to the pre-YouTube, the albinoblacksheep.com days,
yes,
the music video for Banana Man went like pre-viral, like before viral was really a thing. It kind of made the rounds on Albino Black Sheep. And nowadays, a couple of their songs have gotten really popular on TikTok. The Bidding,
Nice.
the fifth track on this one, The Bidding, got really popular on TikTok. And the very last song on this album, Hidden in the Sand, which is kind of like a super mellow, like ukulele song. Almost sounds like it's from like the 20s or 30s or something like that. But yeah, so they've kind of had a resurgence in recent years, which is really cool for a fan like me, because they're re-releasing their stuff on vinyl and on CD, which is awesome because it's like almost impossible to find those because it's kind of an obscure album. So it's going to take a while to get here, but supposedly in July, I'm going to be getting this album on CD and vinyl, which would be really cool.
Nice.
But yeah, Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum,
Yeah.
such a cool album.
Like multi-vocalist is not something you find a lot modern day. So that's pretty cool. Like obviously you always think of the Beatles. You think of a lot of classic bands, but not many. Like we talked about Jet maybe last week. They have like 3 dudes that sing their songs.
Mm.
I always think that's a really cool aspect. It's good for the ears, man.
Yeah,
So you just hear something different every now and then.
I totally agree. And it's cool, especially in a band like Tally Hall, where they all have pretty distinct songwriting styles. It's especially cool because it's like, oh man, like not only is this guy singing this song, but it's also like very much his song. This is very much Rob's song. This is very much Joe's song. Very much Andrew's. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And like just to throw this in, I didn't know Jet had multiple singers until I watched them live on YouTube because they all sound exactly the same.
I wasn't
Just
gonna.
like just like Australian.
I wasn't going to say anything because I didn't want to seem uneducated, but I was shocked when you said that just now.
Dude, yeah.
I was like, well, they have different singers.
Yeah, their drummer sings. They've got like their lead singer and their other guitar player sings, and they all sound exactly the same. Like you can pick apart the drummer because he sounds kind of like Keith Moon. Like he's got a little bit more distinction, but yeah, dude. Fun fact.
Nice, very fun fact.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
All right.
Let's turn it over to you. What's your number one album
The
of
old
2005?
number one is from my favorite band, so you probably can guess who it is. Blinking Lights and Other Revelations by Eels, widely regarded as Eels' masterpiece. It was recorded from 98 through 2004.
Whoa.
Just like in various sessions. The whole thing was done on 4-track recorders in a house. And like you can tell it sounds like that, but it sounds really cool. Like makes you feel like you're in the room with the guy. I'll say the guy because like he is the Eels.
Oh, sure.
But majority he did this album by himself, but he did a lot of like passing around the songs on this one. Like Tom Waits played guitar in a song, just like Lisa Germano is a string player. She played a bunch of stuff on it, so it's got a bunch of players on it, and really interesting sound. It is a double album because it was recorded over such a long time, and obviously very, very well thought out, because they released a lot of albums in between this time, and it's 33 songs. They're all really short songs though, very Beatlesque there. And this is by far his most personal album. I've talked about his life story in the past. He's got a crazy life story, and he pretty much straight up sings about his life on this album. So you get a really good connection to him, and the fact that he recorded most of these songs in his house makes the connection even a little deeper, I feel like. I will say I like the first disc CDs. I like the first disc better, but overall I love the whole thing. It is long. It's like an hour and a half long, so it's better if you break it up, maybe like a little bit at a time. But so many gems on this. By far their most critically acclaimed album, the only one that ever made a top 100 on the Billboard charts. Yeah, and they ended up doing a really cool live tour of this one called Eels with Strings that we've talked about in the past. So there's a lot of cool alternate versions of this one too.
Yeah, the thing that I always think about on this album is all of the bells and like the pitched percussion instruments. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
you'd know, I'm sure, but like if it's xylophone, marimba, glockenspiel, I
Hmm.
don't know what he's playing there, but like he created such a yeah, like it's kind of interesting because like you said, some of the lyrics get kind of dark, but like some of the music sounds like almost whimsical, like almost something you'd hear like in a fairy tale cartoon or something like that.
Yeah.
um
No, for sure.
yeah.
And he actually plays toy piano a lot,
Oh, gotcha.
just like a little toy piano with like 12 keys or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of really like quirky like production stuff and weird instruments. So I always
Hmm.
really like that about them.
I always went with the one that gets stuck in my head too. I think it's just you can correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know this album as well. But I think it's just a little instrumental track that's really short. It just goes dee 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 dee
Hmm.
dee 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 dee. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
such a
It's
nice melody.
actually it's actually a recurring theme throughout the album. There's
Mm.
four different versions of it, I think. They're all called Theme. I think it's actually the opening song, Theme from Blinking Lights.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So he plays it a few different ways. And just some like really interesting stuff on this one. There's a song called Blinking Lights in parentheses for me, where he sings the song. And then later on, there's Blinking Lights for you, where it's just the instrumental and you sing it yourself.
Ah,
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
that is
Um,
cool.
Definitely put a lot of effort into this one. And I
Mm.
had mentioned they actually recorded Shoot Nanny just like as a breather from this, just because he was so invested in this and wanted to make this so great.
Mm.
And I think he delivered for sure. And
Nice.
I will drop this in there too. One of the funniest music videos I've ever seen is for the song "Hey Man, Now You're Really Living." The music video, like you could look it up on YouTube. He basically, before the video starts, he's like, "We spent all the money on the album." He's like, "So we didn't have a budget for the music video," and he just plays the song on like a CD player. Like the song is like actually that he records himself playing the song and sings over top of it with a karaoke mic and just like runs around his house and like takes different shots of things, and he'll show his dog a lot and his dog will just howl every now and then. So it's such a fun music video.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but that's another thing I like about Eels. Like they were never in it for the money.
Mm.
um he's just in it for the joy of writing songs.
Mm.
And particularly on this one, it comes through when you see that music video. You're like, yeah, they literally don't have a budget to make a music video, but he still delivered for the fans.
I
Yeah,
think about that song. I really like that song too. The Hey Man, Now You're Really Living. Have you ever made love to a
yeah,
beautiful girl?
too
Yeah, I
cute.
really like that one. But in
Yeah, it's
the
good.
on the Live with Strings album, because that's probably the Eels that I listen to the most, is that Live with Strings. Because I really like that one. Um, Towards the end of that song, E tries to hit a high note, and his voice like literally explodes. It's like I've
Yeah, I
never
know
heard
exactly what you're
anything
talking
like
about.
it. Like the first time I heard it, I thought that like my speakers had broken, and then I went and just repeated it over and over again. Like so, if you ever the Eels Live
It's
with
really funny.
Strings, yeah, it's holy smokes, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
And he's got such an interesting voice too. Like I think a lot of it has to do with smoking stogies,
Mm,
but such a raspy voice. So
yeah.
yeah, when he tries to hit that high note, it's classic.
Uh, all right. Well,
All
I
right,
guess I'll
dude.
take it to my number one. So this is my number one favorite album, not only of 2005 but of all time.
Woo.
It's just called Question Mark by Neil Morse. And I'm pretty sure the reason it's called Question Mark is because it was like a surprise project. Like he didn't want to reveal anything that was going on with it. So it just became like the Question Mark Project by Neil Morse. And then that just kind of stuck. It's like, that's the name of the album. Super cool album cover. It's just like a flaming question mark, in the desert. I really like it. But this is pretty much like it's like a 12-song suite. It's really meant to be listened to all in a row. The songs, there's not gaps between the songs, which again sounds really intimidating. But the way that he writes, it's really not. there's so many catchy choruses that pull you in. The themes are awesome that come in and out, and it's only about an hour long too, so it's not like an outrageously intimidating prog rock album. But it's kind of so musically, I mean, it's just Neil Morse at his finest. Like amazing themes, awesome verse choruses with super catchy melodies. He had some guest artists play some guitar solos that are awesome on this one. Um, the awesome background vocals like he always has, and thematically, it's kind of a heady Christian theme. It's sort of like the transformation of the temple of God being like the Old Testament, like a literal physical temple, to like when the New Testament rolls around and we have Jesus, then like we the Christians become the temple. Like we are now like the space where God resides. And it's kind of like the album is like that transformation almost. And so a little bit intense, I guess, in terms of theme, like when you have that going on. But when you listen to the songs, you would like if you listen to any song individually, you wouldn't be like, what's happening? Like they all make very much sense. But it's hard for me to describe this one. It's just kind of one that you have to sit down and listen to. And if you have an hour to carve out for yourself where you can press play and really hone in, like I said, it is my absolute favorite album. And to keep the tradition going, I try and wear my shirts. Yeah, so this is my Morse Fest Live 2015. This was all, I mean, how many people can say this, that they got to see their most favorite album of all time performed in full live. It was like euphoric. I was losing my mind. I actually screamed so loud at one point. There's a DVD for the concert that you can pick out my scream among the crowd. I was like,
just lose control of your body.
But it was, I mean, when they played it live at Morse Fest, it was so enormous. They had a horn section on the left side of the stage. They had a live violin, live cello. They had a full choir on the right side of the stage, along with just his world-class talented band. So it was, not only did they play the whole album, but they went all out and just turned it into an amazing production. So Question Mark by Neil Morse. He's not on Spotify, so if you check the link below, he won't be on the Spotify link, but he will be on the YouTube playlist. You'll notice that the songs probably start and end a little choppy because, like I said, they're sort of meant to be listened to all in a row. But yeah, just amazing music.
Yeah, man. Kind of like when you put on the iPod shuffle and it'll like play like a song from the back half of Abbey Road and it just cuts it off.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
Exactly.
But I very specifically remember listening to Question Mark with you in the RAV4 back and forth to high school back in the day. So
yep. With the didn't even have a CD player in that one, only had a cassette tape player. So we had the cassette tape where the wire came out and you'd plug it into your iPod or whatever. Yep. Those were the good times.
Yeah, I actually still have one of those in my 96 Blazer.
It's
the cassette adapter.
It's amazing technology. I feel like I'm like you and I are both pretty educated people. We both went to college. I don't understand how it works. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I have no idea.
I don't get it at all.
I don't get it either. That's hilarious.
Yeah, whoever invented that, they didn't get enough credit. Their name should be on billboards and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I'll recap it for the folks. So Brian's top 5 from the year 2005, we had Out of Exile by Audioslave, Farewell Old Friends by Bleach, Plans by Death Cab for Cutie, X and Y by Coldplay, and Blinking Lights and Other Revelations by Eels. My top 5, number 5, sharing with Brian, Farewell Old Friends by Bleach. Number 4, Nothing is Sound by Switchfoot. Number 3, A Collision by David Crowder Band. Number 2, Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum by Tally Hall. And number 1, Question Mark by Neil Morse.
Nice. It's great stuff.
Yeah, great episode, man. We probably could have done a full episode on several of those albums. Just like,
Yeah. Oh, easily.
We cut ourselves
I know it's
down
hard
a
to
lot.
contain yourself. Yeah. I know stuff pops in my head. I'm like, don't say it. Nobody cares.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always say we hope you had as much fun listening to this as we do making it. We just have an absolute blast. And please check back on our YouTube page in a couple of weeks, because we are so excited to present to you Blue Turnip reunion show. We got an awesome set list for you guys, covers and originals. Yeah, it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I'm going to start practicing.
Yeah, I've started. I like, well, I don't want to hit too much, but we're playing one of your songs that we've never played before, and it's a really cool song that's on your SoundCloud. So,
yeah, thanks for the tip. And a little teaser for next week. I have the Beatles on my list. How is that possible? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, do I have a teaser for next time?
A little 2006 Beatles for you.
Let's see. My teaser for next time is all 5 of the bands have never been on my top 5 yet so far. We got five brand new bands that have never been on my top 5 for 2006. So
yes, now I'm curious. A great tease.
Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. This has been Blue Turnip's Bad Podcast about good music, 2005 Top 5 Album Countdown Edition. And we will see you guys in a couple weeks for the live Blue Turnip show. And then a couple weeks after that, we'll pick back up the podcast as normal.
All right, man. Looking forward to it. See you next time.
Signing off.